Alright, we're holding Hilchot Basar בחלב Siman Tes towards the end. We're going to be doing Sif Gimel. I don't know if we can get to Sif Dalad. What we've done so far in Siman Tes is spoken about the various halachos in eating gvino after Basar, eating dairy products after meat. Or, in some instances, and according to some poskim, in eating meat even after milk. We obviously know that there's a problem of having them together, and even though that is also not a deraisa, that at least we have an agreement that it's asur, at least midrabanan. The question is afterwards, one after the other, and how much afterwards is it possible to have one or the other. So all of this is of course from the Sugya and Gemara and Chulin over there, that there appears to be some harchaka, some concept of separating the two and not having them in the same seuda. Well, we explained that if it was meat that we had, which is more apparent from the Gemara, that if that meat was the one that was consumed first, that the dairy meal should be the following seuda. And we had a question about when the following seuda is. And that is where many shittas sprang out. As you know, even though Baruch Hashem we all have the same Torah, Am Yisrael, because of the galus, because of the diaspora, the scattering of Jews all over the world, we have various minhagim. The customs, the many customs, minhagim, are as a result of galus, for the most part. There were some differences in opinion, even in the time of the Beis HaMikdash. We have Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai very long time ago, having differing opinions about various things. But minhagim, which are, even though it's halacha too, but it's not exactly the same thing as if the Chachomim told us this is what the halacha is, whether it's the rice or the rabbana. It's a minhag. And a minhag, of course, has more leniencies than if it wouldn't just be a minhag, but it would be a real halacha that was determined by the Chachomim. So this siman concerns certain minhagim, especially the amount of time one has to wait between meat, and even between milk and meat. In other words, if you had cheese, as we said before, certain cheeses, especially the hard cheeses, pose a problem. Because the problem raised by Rashi concerning the amount of time necessary to wait after having meat because of the tam hanimshach bepeh, the flavor there a considerable amount of time. It's not that we have something in our system per se, it's in the mouth. It's having had the meat and now still having that taste and now having the milk after it. So that reasoning of Rashi also applies to having hard cheese, which according to some, the way they explain it, appears to be, or to present a similar problem of having the shuman, the grease, the fatty cheese, lingering in the mouth for a while. So do you have to wait 6 hours after hard cheese or not? So it depends. We've talked about the various shittas. Some say yes, real hard cheese we would have to wait 6 hours. Some only wait 1 hour. If it's soft cheese, it's not such a big problem. The main concern is hard cheese. And what is hard cheese? That's another question. Is yellow cheese hard cheese? We're a little bit lenient about these things, unless it's real hard cheese that everybody agrees with that it's hard cheese, like the Swiss cheese, the moldy cheese, depending how many months it was aged and so forth. So if you're going to have hard cheese that according to everybody is considered hard cheese, you should wait. You should wait up to 6 hours. If it's hard cheese, but maybe not necessarily very hard cheese, but it may be considered hard cheese, 1 hour is sufficient according to most poskim today. Now, for those who allow basar right after meat, basar right after cheese, or cheese right after basar, according to Rabbeinu Tam, there would still have to be various other conditions met. It would have to be the seuda, especially the dairy after the separate meal. You'd have to bench. You would have to have hadacha. You'd have to have netilas yadayim. Netilas yadayim meaning wash your hand, rinse your hand, especially in those days that cutlery was not used, and you may have gotten your hands dirty. The question would be, if you waited a certain amount of hours, would you also need kinuach vehadocha? Kinuach vehadocha, which seems to also be a condition that's required, is not so sure if it's also required if you've waited the amount of time. Well, if you've waited it 6 hours or 5 hours, or if you're yakir 3 hours, Would you also need to cleanse yourself? I mean, by that time, everything is really gone. Apparently, you may not need that if you've waited the hours. When would you need it for sure? If you did not wait any time. Obviously, if there's no time, if you follow like the Shita, like the very, very, very minimum of 1 hour after Basar that you can have challah, like the Ramah brings down, even though he doesn't hold like that in the end, then of course you should have a different seuda when you're going to have the dairy, and you should have kinuach vehadocha, rinsing your mouth. Rinsing the mouth in hadocha should also apply if you had first cheese and then meat. When does that apply? In a Shavuos, you're going to have a cheesecake, you're going to have cheese Danish, you're going to have even a slice of cheese. And I don't think most people have it in the same Suda because you shouldn't have it in the Suda. You have it after Kiddush and then you wash your hands. So there's going to be some time anyway by the time you have the meat. So you had your cheesecake, you're going to rinse, you're going to clean your hands, maybe even rinse your mouth. And even if you didn't rinse your mouth, you're going to eventually eat other things between the cheese and the meat. You're not going to have one exactly after the other. In the same way we do it with fish, not to have, whether it's meat and then fish or fish and then meat, we don't definitely not have the two together because of sakana reasons, health reasons. That's the reason with fish. What we do is we eat challah, which serves as kinuach. Kinuach accomplishes what? It accomplishes that it removes any remnants, hopefully, that may still be lying around in the mouth. That's what kinuach does. It's not just having something in between the two. It's more than that. It's supposed to be a cleansing aid of sorts. Then, on top of that, according to some, you need both, kinuach and hadocha, so you want to have a little bit of schnapps, a little bit of a drink between the two. By the way, speaking about drinks, I don't know about you, but when I eat a meal, a whole meal, I rarely drink anything until the end of the meal. Like the Rambam says. Now, I'm not doing it because the Rambam says that. I do it because it just happens to be that if I were to drink more than just a drop of water, after I ate the first course, I would be full. I just somehow, it fills me up and I lose my appetite to eat, especially if it's seltzer. It has gas, it's like, the meal is done. The Rambam says it's always best to drink at the end of the meal. In general, he says that's the healthy thing to do, is to not mix the liquids with the solids at the very beginning or the middle. A little bit is fine. A little bit of a schnapps, a little bit of wine, in between it's okay, just a little bit. But if you're going to have a whole cup, you're going to really fill yourself with liquid, you're not going to have as much appetite. Actually, dietitians tell you that. Drink 8-9 cups of water a day for two reasons. I mean, first of all, it's healthy, that you should have so much liquids. And number two, if you fill yourself with liquids, you won't want to eat snacks. Right? It makes some sense. I guess from agreeing to doing, it's a long road. I mean, to implement these things that we agree with, it's not so easy. I mean, we have to remember that. But there's some truth to that. So here, there's obviously a need for kinuach and hadocha in various situations. So even if you had the dairy first and it's soft cheese, you want to rinse your mouth at least. Do you need the tilas yadayim or not? So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, as to when really kinuach and hadocha, or when really hadocha and tilas yadayim are really, really necessary. But more about the tilas yadayim, because kinuach and hadocha we pretty much covered, and that is that if you're going to be having them close to each other, even though the dairy is first, it's always a good idea to somehow make sure your hands are clean and rinse your mouth and eat something in between. Unless, of course, you've waited several hours, then we said the hours took care of that. All right. That's pretty much what we've done so far. I mean, we went over the various shitas. No reason to review them again. I mean, there are various minhagim on how long one has to wait after the meat. And there are certain exceptions, of course. There's cholim, there's children. We spoke about that too. And the whole idea is, of course, either according to Rashi or according to the Rambam with the Basar ben Ashina, that it presents a problem within a certain amount of time, and it does not present a problem after a certain amount of time. The question is, what is that amount of time? Depending which shita you hold by, Rashi or the Rambam. Mechaber brings both. Since he brings both, so even if you have shuman, which is not basar, we're going to be concerned, you have fat, soup. Even if you just chewed for a baby, a child, and you did not really swallow it, so there's not so much the problem, according to Rashi, of tam nimshach, the flavor is sticking around, but you may have basar ben ashinaim, and so we're machmir. We're machmir if you had a little bit. We're machmir to wait 6 hours. And by the way, we're machmir like the sheet is that not 5.5 hours, 6 complete hours. Okay? All right. Now, Sif Gimel. Hochal tafshil shel basar. Let's say you ate a tafshil shel basar. This is a completely different concept. A tafshil shel basar means a dish that is fleshig, as we say in Yiddish. It's a meat dish. Meat dish does not mean that it contains meat. Otherwise, it's considered like meat. If any dish has meat, meatballs, whatever it is, that's called meat. Because the meat is be'ein, the meat is there. So when the Mechaber here brings the halacha of tafshil shel basar, all he's talking about is parve food, noodles, for example, that were cooked with meat. They were cooked with meat, but there's no meat present in the noodles. Okay? I mean, you have cholent. Cholent is a tafshil shel basar. When? When the meat is gone. On Shabbos, you finish the meat and there's leftovers, potatoes and beans. No, I'm going to get to that. Let's assume there's nothing, zero.
No fat,
nothing. Let's assume.
Juice.
Nothing. All you're eating is, you're right. That will be a separate problem, a separate issue.
So we're saying
right now we're saying that there's no meat, no gravy. Okay? So very good point. There may be, depending on the tafshil, what it is. It was cooked with meat, but you took it out of the meat. There's no meat left. That's called tafshil shel basar. Ochal tafshil shel basar, if you ate such a dish, mutar lechol achrav tafshil shel gvina. Yeah.
Are we saying there's meat left?
No, there is. There is. Good point.
Against the meat?
No. Good point. When we say tafshil, not only do we say it was cooked with meat and the meat has been removed, we are saying that it has a flavor of meat.
But we don't say tam cake.
No.
Not
the gabi the halacha that we're going to be learning. Right. So again, we're talking about that there's no meat at all. So ochal tafshil shel basar mutar lechol achrav tafshil shel gvina. You can eat a dish of dairy right after that. Right? What are we talking about here? Archakas still. The whole Siman is about archakas. Separating the two, how much do we need to separate? If we're dealing with a tafshil, you don't have to wait anything. Mechaber is the one that holds like the Rambam, Rashi, whatever, and he says 6 hours. Now 0 time. No problem. Alright? Now, we're going to see that this is based on the sugya in the Gemara in Chulin Kuf Hey. If it's a tafshil, you don't have to wait. You can eat the tafshil of gvina right afterwards. V'hanetila b'neihem. What about netila? Washing your hands? Eina ela reshus. If you want to, you don't have to. V'yesh matzrichim netila. There are poskim, of course, who require this kind of a case, netila. All right, so far so good. Abal in ba lechol hagvina atzma achar tafshil. If you're going to eat not a tafshil, a dairy dish that's been cooked with dairy. In the same way that the tafshil shel basar means cooked with meat. Tafshil shel chola means it was cooked with dairy, with cheese. But there's no cheese there. So if you're going to eat actual real cheese, cheesecake or whatever, achar tafshil shel basar, after the tafshil shel basar, or ha-basar atzmai, you're going to have achar tafshil shel gvina, choyva litol yodav, then you have to wash your hands. Okay. What do we see so far from the Mechaber? One thing is clear. No 6 hours. Regardless of what you're eating, is it a tafshil and a tafshil? I just ate a tafshil shel basar and I want to eat a tafshil shel chalav. Or even if I ate basar, according to the real halacha, even if I had steak, basar, and I'm going to have a dairy product that has dairy ingredients even. It has tam chalav, but it's not dairy, right? There's no, in other words, there's no cheese, there's no milk in there. All it is it's a tafshil. It was cooked with dairy. It has even the tam. You don't really have to wait. Now, the reason I said really is because that's not the way the world conducts itself. Even though the Mechaber is very clear that's the halacha, and a lot of poskim hold like that, halacha lemaisa, that in reality you would not have to wait. We're machmir today, and I'm going to explain that soon. But that's the halacha.
So we're talking the tafshil of milk or dairy product itself after a tafshil of...
Right. Or
And the difference between the two is whether you have to or whether it's optional to wash your hands.
Just the washing of the hands would be the whole difference between actual cheese or tafshil shel challah. If you're having the basar, if you had meat and you want to have a tafshil shel challah, then you have to wash your hands. If you had gvina first, of course, you can't have gvina after basar. If you had gvina first, real gvina, and now you want to have a tafshil shel basar, you wash your hands. Right? That's what he says here. אבל אם בא לאכול הגבינה עצמו, אחר תפשיל של בשר, או הבשר עצמו אחר תפשיל של גבינה, חייב ליטול ידו. Now here, he's adding something else. In other words, obviously, he's permitting us, besides the netila, see, besides telling us that it's a chayva to wash your hands if you're going to have the gvina after the tafshil shel basar, or if you're going to have the basar atzmo achar shetafshil shel gvina, besides the chayva, he is letting us know a big chiddush, that you can have gvina, forget about the washing now, you can have it even after a tafshil shel basar. So there's really two halachas here in this mechaber. There's when is there a chayva of netilas yadayim? A chayva, you have to wash your hands, right? Not between tafshil and tafshil. Unless one of them is the real McCoy. You're having basar, then you have a tafshil shel gvina, right? Or you have a tafshil shel basar, and then you have gvina, right? But he's telling us an additional halacha. If you have real gvina after a tafshil shel basar, it's not a problem. You can have it right away. You can't have it after basar. You have to wait 6 hours. This is a tafshil shel basar. According to the Machaber Shita, you can have it right away. Okay, before we see the Ramah, let me tell you a little bit where all of this is coming from. In the Gemara, in that Gemara, there's a Toises. In the Toises, there's various Shitas. There's several Bala Toises. We have Rabbeinu Shmuel, and we have Rabbeinu Tam. And how do you understand the Gemara over there that says that Maim and Tzoim is a Rishus? In other words, over there, Gemara says that we have Maim Rishonim, we have Maim Achroinim. Then there's a concept that we mentioned briefly last time also about Maim and Tzoim, in between. It was in the middle of the meal. And over there, it's apparent from the Gemara that Maim and Tzoim is a Rishus. It's permissible. In other words, what's the better word translation, Ilan, for Rishus? It's optional. Optional is better. Yeah, optional, if you want to, between tafshil and tafshil. What is the meaning of tafshil and tafshil? So the Rabbeinu Shmuel understands that bein tafshil and tafshil means bein tafshil basar and bein tafshil chalav. You don't really have the basar, you don't really have the gvina, you have a tafshil of the two. Then the maim that you may need at times, in this case, would be optional. But if you're talking about tafshil shel basar and gvina, real gvina, right beforehand, then choyva litol yadayim. Then you have to. Then that's a choyva to wash your hands. Obviously, that's the only possibility that it could be talking about, because according to Rabbeinu Shmuel, the Gemara never considers gvina achar tafshil shel basar or achar basar. Because that you can't have right away. He understood all along that the Gemara never was matir to have dairy, a real dairy, a cheese, after meat, or after tafshil shel basar. Says that's not allowed. That, of course, we have to wait 6 hours. So the only time there is a chayv of netilas yadayim is in a scenario where you're allowed to have one after the other. Where's that? Meat after cheese. So if it's a tafshil shel basar after real gevina, then I would say you need netilas yadayim. But if the two of them are tafshilim, you don't need anything. Rabbeinu Tam is the big chiddush here. Rabbeinu Tam, as we've learned by now, he holds you don't really need anything. It's all a chumrah. Mar ukva is a chumrah. It's all a chumrah. You don't really need anything. Just bench, wash your hands, rinse your mouth. So Rabbeinu Tam sees the sugya as different. The bein tafshil legvina, then when the Gemara is talking about bein tafshil legvina, it's actually talking about even if the tafshil came first. You had a tafshil of meat. There's no meat in there, but there was a tafshil of meat. Then you could have it.
You can have it.
You can have the cheese. Sorry. You can have the cheese right after the tafshil. Therefore, the Rabbeinu Tam learns, it's very simple what the Gemara meant about Mayim Emtsoim Rishus. Bein tafshil letafshil means it's not real gvina. That case of bein tafshil letafshil does not require any netilas yadayim. It's only Rishus. So from that Rabbeinu Tam, it's obvious that he says that if he would be tafshil and then gvina, you would need a tilas yadayim, but you can actually have it. He's the one that says, and that's where they learn it from in this halacha, that you can have gvina after the tafshil. Right? Between tafshil and tafshil, nothing is ba'in, so there's no chumrah. There's no requirement of netilas yadayim.
Netilas yadayim here, you're just talking about just a regular washing hands, or
Yeah.
you're talking actual
No, just washing. Just plain wash, right? And what Rav Nachman said in the Gemara of ben tafshil gvina is choiva. When he said choiva, he meant only netilas yadayim. And of course,
What is the word neti?
What?
What is yadayim?
To take.
To take.
To take, yeah. Because they would take the natla, they would take the keli, yeah.
In the netilas yadayim, he means it more metaphorically.
Yeah.
You just
Right.
need to wash it.
Yeah, obviously, yeah. You don't have the requirements that we're makbid so much in Natila, right? And the same thing is lehefech, that if you would have cheese first, and then you would have a tafshil shel basar, according to Rabbeinu Tam also, you would need just wash your hand. There would definitely not be a problem. So according to Rabbeinu Shmuel, it would be usher to have gvina after tafshil shel basar. And it's only mutter to have the tafshil of chalav before the basar. As we've learned all along, we wait, even if it's after a tafshil. That's the chiddush over here. But then from the mechaber itself, it appears to be that the chiddush, it's a big chiddush. He's actually saying like Rabbeinu Tam. He's saying that if all you had was a tafshil shel basar, go ahead. You can have a tafshil shel cholav, or you can even have a cholav atzmai. Ochal tafshil shel basar, mutar lechol ochal tafshil shel gvina, and then the netila is only reshus. אבל אם בא לאכול הגבינה עצמו, אחר התפשיל של בוסר, או הבוסר עצמו, אחר התפשיל של גבינה, חייב ליטול ידו. All he's talking about is, do I need to wash my hands or not? That means I can actually have the gvina, the cheesecake, after this tafshil of basar. I don't have that 6 hours anymore, according to this mechaber. Why? Well, let's think about it. There's a question about soup. The Taz speaks about the soup. What do we do with soup? A meaty soup. You cooked meat, you took out the meat, it's no longer there, but it was a meaty soup, you could actually feel the tam of basar. So the Taz brings it down, and I think it could be the Darkei Moshe, it could be, I think it's also in the Beis Yosef, B'Shem Hagos Maimanas, that a soup that was cooked with meat, even though the meat is no longer there, it's meaty, it's very meaty, and it has the din of basar mamish. If it's soup, Rabbeinu Yoina holds that a marak, a soup, is just like a tafshil shel basar, unless he says, or they explain it, unless it's very, very dense, very, very thick, aveh, like vegetables, then you say that it has a din of basar. Okay, so we have a machlokes legabi marak, legabi soup. What's really the issue over here? The issue is going back to the source. The whole reasoning behind not having dairy after meat. Are we going to have the problem with the soup or not? That the flavors are there. Well, there's no basar ben hashinayim. Remember the Rambam? Basar ben hashinayim? What basar ben hashinayim do we have with the soup? As we've talked about before, there's really no basar ben hashinayim. There's a problem according to Rashi, perhaps. According to Rashi, maybe yes. And since the Mechaber paskins like both of them, really, we're concerned with both reasons, why would he say over here that by a tafshil shel basar, you can have your cheesecake right after it? You don't have to wait 6 hours. You follow me? It's a good point. If the Mechaber is really concerned about all the shittas, he's concerned about. Why will tafshil shel basar be any different? Just because there's no meat there, but it was cooked with meat. The tam is still there. The flavor is still there, but apparently, just to have a flavoring of meat does not produce the problem, the concerns that we had before. It's not the ain. If the meat is not present, it's not going to be a problem, according to any of the shitas. That is why Rabbeinu Yonah says if it's very, very dense, if you really have it's still, you can feel the meat there, that's different. But otherwise, it's not a problem. The Taz, of course, brings down one shita that says, it's soupy, it's like shuman, it's like fat, it's greasy, at least like Rashi, yes. So according to that, I think the reasoning behind the opinion that is machmir by soup, even though there's no meat present, is because it's going like Rashi. Otherwise, how do you explain it? Why should it be a problem? The soup is a tafshil, isn't it? There's no meat in there. So it's a tafshil shel basar. Then what could be the problem? Why would he say soup is any different? However, I saw in the name of the smak. Before we go to the smak, the halacha over here, if you look at the Tur, what the Tur says in the name of his father, it's fascinating. They pass him like Rabbeinu Tam, and the Mechaber too. So according to Rabbeinu Yonah, of course, the svara of the Rambam does not apply by the soup, right? Which would explain, okay, based on that reasoning, I understand I don't have to wait. But if I hold like Rashi, even if it's soup, regardless, it's still a problem. In other words, we see that however you look at it, there's always going to be an issue here. The fats, the taste. So what is exactly the heter? So the Smak says something interesting. The Smak is mechalek. He says that when we say tafshil, that a tafshil shel basar, you can have a tafshil shel cholav right afterwards, or as the Mechaber says, even the cholav itself. A tafshil is a situation where you took, let's say, potatoes, and you fried it with onions, it's in meat, okay? That's a tafshil, right? It was fried, it was done with meat. And then what happened? There's no more meat. The meat is removed, or whatever. What has happened here? What has happened here is that the potatoes and the onions have diluted the flavor of the meat, or does not allow the meat to be so felt. By soup, the Smak will say, the soup is different. There's nothing to dilute the flavor of the meat. It's all water. It's all meat. It's all taste of meat. You see? So that's why he says a tafshil is not soup. In other words, the din of a tafshil will be different than the din of a soup. In a soup, perhaps we should be machmir. So you follow me? So that's the chiluk the Smak makes between soup. In other words, explaining why a soup may be stricter than a plain tafshil that has had an effect of diluting the time of the basar. Yeah.
You have fish.
Right.
You take out the thing out there.
Exactly.
You can still see whatever.
Exactly. Sure. That's what the Taz says. The Taz says, yes, soup. And a lot of places are machmir by soup. Yeah, we spoke about it. We spoke about that soup may be different because.
I don't understand how the others.
Yeah.
How can they be answered?
We'll talk about it soon. I'm going to give you a little bit more we're going to expand a little bit about this idea of tam in a moment, and that may help us. But I agree.
It's not only tam. You see that.
Yeah. It ultimately boils down to Rashi versus Rambam. Rambam for sure doesn't have a problem with it. It's only Rashi, because remember Rambam was only basar ben hashinayim. What's the problem if you had shuman? You swallowed some shuman, some soup. That was our example of soup before. Yeah, so that's what some say. According to Rashi, it should be a problem. Now, based on this Gemara, and based on the way Rabbeinu Tam understands the Gemara, that it's tafshil is okay, then is Morak a tafshil or not? So that's where the Smak wants to be mechalek, that Morak would not be a tafshil. What the Gemara was matir was a real tafshil that somehow, because of the potatoes and the onions and everything else in there, you don't really feel the tam as opposed to a soup, like you were saying. And that's why the Taz brings it down that that some are machmir with the soup.
Now, something that was cooked in a pot that was in Yomo.
Oh, we're going to get. That's
that
next.
Called the tafshil?
No, that's the next halacha. Yeah.
So tafshil is something that has to happen with the actual meat or
Yes,
cheese itself.
sure. That's how they define a tafshil shel basar. All right, let's look at the Ramah.
And they're not worried about a sauce or a gravy of the meat
No,
being absorbed.
nothing. No. The Ramah. Let's look at the Ramah. V'shuman shel basar, dino kebasar atzmai. Sure.
That they hold it that there is no gravy.
Gravy has a din like soup. Either, I mean, if there is gravy, it's like soup. How do you pass by a soup? With a pen. Yeah. So the Ramah says on this mechaber, Shuman shel basar dino kebasar atzmoi. He holds like the shuman, fat, is like meat. Now, the nahagu achshav, the Ramah says, today our custom is all over the world, lehachmir shelo lechol gvina is achar tafshil shel basar. Kimo achar basar atzmoi. In the same way, we don't need right away dairy after meat. We don't need dairy after a tafshil shel basar. So if this is a fleishike food, somehow it was cooked with meat, we don't have not even a cup of coffee with milk, because you just had a fleishike meal. That's the meaning today. That's the halacha. Not only is that the halacha, he says ve'ein leshanos v'lifrutz geder. He's very machmir on this. He says don't ever dare make any leniency for this. That's the halacha everywhere. Okay, now I'm not.
So that would be what we were all the time raising with this, the fat of the chicken.
So today that's the halacha. Now, what about the mechaber? What about the Sfardim? What's the custom about? There is no real halacha by the Sfardim that says what the Ramah says. Mechaber was very clear. You can have your cheesecake after a tafshil shel basar. He doesn't say anything.
So you could eat, especially since chicken is a rabbanon anyway. So
Right.
you could eat.
No, but remember, today we're not mechalik. We're not mechalik between chicken and meat.
So you could, and then have a cheesecake, according to the Sfardim.
According to the mechaber so far. Right.
You could have afterwards a cheese.
Now, it's mashma from the Darkei Moshe, by the way, that what the Ramah said, that today we don't have cheese even after a tafshil shel basar, he also meant we don't even have a tafshil shel chalav after a tafshil shel basar. In other words, even though he's using the words no gvina, not to have cheese after a tafshil shel basar, what he actually also implies is that we go...
Because he's not being machalik.
Right, we were machmer completely, not even to have a tafshil shel chalav after tafshil shel basar. I think that's what's mashma from the Darkei Moshe. And basically, all the poskim, a lot of poskim, the Kaf HaChaim, the Chochmas Sodom, the Marshal, I think also, they all say that basically that's the minhag today. Rabbi Kiva Eger seems to be saying that it's understood from the Ramah that it would be okay at tafshil shel chalav. All you would need is a netila, washing your hands. He's not saying that it's implied, I think. Basically, from what I recall, he's more lenient on this. Anyway, from what I've read, from what I've seen, Sfardim, Ashkenazim, we're all are machmer today in all these kinds of situations. Not to have, whether it's a tafshil, whether it's the real thing, one after another. We just wait the 6 hours regardless.
So if you
I saw that brought
eggs
down.
from the children, you had egg with the meat.
Yeah, the Ben Ish Chai, I think, speaks about the eggs.
So then you would subsequently, as this have...
Not necessarily. Some are lenient with the egg. Yeah, if they with the shell. Yeah, I have to check it again. Remind me.
The Shuchan Aruch,
Yeah.
one.
Right.
Why are the Sfardim holding like?
Not like the Ramah. It's not just the Ramah. It's a lot of poskim. Just a great deal of poskim basically say that today we don't distinguish. We don't. People can easily make a mistake. You know, what is exactly a tafshil? What if there's a little bit meat left in there? You know, so the reasoning behind this new minhag of today, where machmir, obviously is because the poskim who analyze the situation, they say, listen, even though that's the halacha in general, but we're going to be machmir. However, somebody who is sick, even a little sick, would be able to have his milk, if he needs it, after he had a tafshil shel basar. Even the Ramah would agree to that.
Now, sick with an exceptional state of his health, or something who is chronically?
No, not something chronically. Somebody that is really not feeling well, and part of his what he needs.
Let's say he has a chronic something that he always has to.
Yeah.
And having milk is useful for that.
Yeah, he would be able to.
He has a cough, or
he would be able to. Rabbi Elyahu, by the way, and the other poskim deal with another question. and that is, can you have a pill that has lactose as one of the ingredients right away after you had a steak dinner? I'm sorry, not necessarily. It doesn't have to be steak. It could be London broil. Or whatever. Could you have, it has lactose. Now, Baruch Hashem, by now we know a little bit about lactose.
So many pills that have lactose?
Dairy. Oh, sure.
Dairy?
It's a dairy, but it's lactose.
Dafka
Lactose. The question was
Dafka. Any dairy, or are we talking specifically Dafka?
Well, the question, that shaila that he had was concerning lactose, and you'll see what the heter is. But we just talked about choil in general, that we could be mekel after a tafshel. But here the chiddush was not the tafshel, after meat, real meat. Should you have to wait? He says you don't have to wait for the following reason. First of all, with the lactose pill, the lactose in the process of mixing or making the pill, it has become lo roi lachilas ke, which in general is less of a problem. It's not edible for animal consumption. Number one. Number two, lactose is made from the whey, or from the water of the whey. In other words, it's not made from the milk itself. It has less of a problem than the gvina atzmo. That was less of an issue. Make vino.
Whey is make.
Yeah. No, the whey itself is nesiyube dechalba. That's no. Mei cholov
would still be a problem.
No, it's less than the whey. No, you cook the whey. Remember, you took the whey, you cooked it, and then what floats, the water from that is the mei cholov, right? Now, what's the third heter? There are some that allow you to have the tafshil shel cholov after basar. And this, if anything, this pill, if anything, this would be a tafshil shel cholov. It wouldn't be cholov atzmai.
Because lactose is only from whey?
Huh?
Well, what makes it a tafshil? Because the lactose from the whey.
The way it's processed, it wouldn't be gvino atzma. It's not the cheese. It's a tafshil. It has the flavor, the taste, an ingredient.
But the lactose is something derived from this. That's what I'm
right. But it's not.
Be a tafshil.
No, because we were.
Still mamashas.
No, there's no real mamashas. No real mamashas. If anything, it's more like a tam or like an ingredient there. But it's not a be'in. There's no be'in. In other words, we have various heterim. That's the point of this pill. There's various heterim and allowing it even after basar mamish lechora.
So tafshil would be one.
I think so. Yeah, that's the way it's explained. Yeah, tafshil would be one, and that's what we're saying. There are deyas opinions that hold that you can have a tafshil shel cholov after the basar atzmoi, and for sure even after a tafshil shel basar. Right? Here is, in other words, even after the basar atzmoi, because all it is a tafshil shel cholov. Right, as we saw in the Mechaber, but if you want to eat the gvina itself after tafshil shel basar, or basar atzmoi achar tafshil shel gvina, obviously in that case you have a choyv little yoda. That he only mentions the choyv of netilas yadayim, but obviously it's implied from that there's no problem eating one after the other either. Just have to remind me to double check why the Mechaber didn't speak about the other example of tafshil shel cholov after basar atzmoi. He started off saying tafshil shel basar mutar lechol achar tafshil shel vino. But in balechol gvino atzmo achar tafshil shel basar. Or basar, but he didn't say balechol tafshil shel cholov after basar atzmoi. Yeah, I have to check that out. What
is really a tafshil? You cook rice with milk.
Right.
And milk is milk. That's why it's not like
yeah, but it's not milk. It's not cheese. That's what tafshil means. You don't have it be'ain. It's not there. It's dairy, right? You can't have it mixed. You can't mix it with. Here, the only question is about having one after the other, not having them at the same time. So, do you have to wait 6 hours? That's the only question. Our chumrah of waiting 6 hours is only when you had the real meat. Now you're having real milk.
The milk, I don't really understand. You would have to say having rice that was cooked in milk after meat.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, because I mean, if you squeeze the rice and the milk, You could also say it's carved.
Mamish.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for an example. The meat is gone. It's clear. The meat gone.
Yeah. You scooped it out. You scooped out the vegetables out of this dish that had meat. There's no meat on it.
He's talking about milk.
Or the other way around.
You steamed your rice in milk. So now the rice absorbed milk.
Right.
It contains milk
It
inside.
absorbed the time.
I
Right.
know.
No,
It actually has the
actual-
liquid. It
Yeah.
contains the liquid. What he's saying is if you press the rice, you'll end up with a glass of milk.
You won't end up with full milk, but the,
Yeah.
the rice will have the milk.
Not only taste of milk,
Right.
mamashas of milk itself. It's like if you cook the rice in. It's like the soup. It's like the soup.
It all depends if you can actually see the milk or not. If you just press on it and you see milk coming out, that's called be'ain.
Maybe a better example, rice, the butter rice.
Yeah, but you don't really see it unless it's be'ain. It's already the heat pretty much took care of the be'ain part. Yeah. All right.
Then if you cook, then it all just is automatically a tashel?
Yes. It's at least fleishiks. In other words, is it a tafshel or not depends if it was actually cooked with me. Because we're going to see, with the next halacha we're going to see in the Ramah is what happens if food in a fleishik pot that is clean that was used on that day for fleish. Okay? But there's no meat. You didn't cook it with meat. You just cooked it in a fleishik pot. Can you have that rice now with some milk? That's a different halacha. That's the next halacha. What we saw now is actually was cooked with meat, was cooked with milk. But what if it was only cooked in the pot of meat? Right? That's going to be the difference.
So again, the question to me to remind you was why.
In other words, why don't they mention here? I mean, it's pretty much
of milk after basar.
after the basar itself.
After basar itself.
Right.
What were the other questions?
No. That was the only point that I wanted to double check that why don't they make mention of it? That's all, because it seems to imply the same.
And the one who didn't is the mechaber.
Yeah, I mean, Mechaber says tafshil is okay, right? Netila b'neim is only reshus, which is what the Gemara, the way Rabbi Natan learns the Gemara, that there's a din of netila, and in this case the netila is a reshus. The only time the netila is a chayva is if you have bolechol hagvina after the tafshil, which you're allowed to, according to Rabbi Natan, or basar atzmoi achar tafshil shel gvina. Then there's a need of a chayva. So he says when the netila is a chayva, and he tells us that you can have a tafshil, you can have gvina, after a tafshil shel basar. But he does not discuss this, for some reason, of what about a tafshil shel chalav after basar mamash. Right? Okay, so I'm going to double check.
To make sure that I write
Yeah, I'm going to double check that, just to be sure. Yeah. All right, but before we go to the next halacha, real quickly, legabe netilas yadayim, or washing one's hands, Mechaber says that if you're eating cheese right after the tafshil shel basar, or even before the tafshil shel basar, it's a chayva. The machloikas of the poskim is if, according to the Mechaber, would you also need in this kind of examples hadocha or kinuach? There's a machloikas, but I'm not going to get into all the opinions here as to why yes, why not, because Mechaber doesn't mention it. He's basically going from the Gemara, and obviously you have to wash your hands. You don't want to have it in your hands. But hadocha and kinuach, since we're talking about tafshil, it's not the real thing. Maybe yes, maybe not. The sick man, by the way, even though we say he may be able to eat cheese or milk, he may gossip right after the tafshil of basar, he would still need netila and kinuach and hadocha according to the Ramah. He would still have to wash his hands. He would have to rinse. Just because we're allowing him to, he still has to do it right. The Ramah only differs as far as the netila. In one way, he does different from the Mechaber, that he would require netilas yadayim even after a tafshil shel chalav, before you're going to have your tafshil shel basar. Even though it's only tafshilim, he would require, before you go have your tafshil shel basar, wash your hands and do kinuach and hadocha too. I think, kinuach and hadocha not necessarily. But netilas yadayim, he would be a little bit more machmir than the Mechaber, even if the two are tafshil. Whereas the Mechaber only requires, like Rabbi Natan basically learns, is if you have real cheese, then you have a tafshil shel basar, or you had a tough Shabbat and you're going to have cheese now. Okay, now, what we'll do just for a couple minutes, and then we'll continue on Thursday, is I'm going to give you an introduction of a very important topic in Basar בחלב, and it also applies in Taaruvot a little bit. We discussed it briefly, and that is the famous topic of Nat Bar Nat. Have you heard of that? Nat Bar Nat is Noisen Tam, Bar Noisen Tam, which basically means a diluted flavor as a result of being second generation flavor. I'll explain it. There's a machloikas, three-way machloikas, and we'll learn it in Siman Tzadik Hey. Later on, we're going to learn this machloikas, we're going to see the actual examples in Halacha. But I decided to talk about it briefly, only briefly now, because it will help us understand the next remote somewhat. Nat Bar Nat means as follows, at least according to the Mechaber. You cooked rice in a meat pot that was used on that day. It's Ben Yoma, let's make it hard. It was used that morning. This rice, you can have with milk. Not only can you have the milk afterwards, you can actually you can eat it with dairy. Mechaber, yeah, you can have this rice with dairy. You can put yogurt, mix it. You cook this parv rice. Rice is parva. In a meat pot. By the way, the Sfardim follow this. This is the Mechaber later on. Okay? You can have dairy with this rice. No problem whatsoever. They actually do it. It's normal, okay. Perfectly okay.
No, it wasn't cooked with pot.
No. It's just a meat pot.
But it was used for the same day.
And it was used even the same day.
It was cleaned properly.
Cleaned properly. What's Nat Bar Nat? One concept or one opinion, which is basically, by the way, it is the majority, I think, opinion, holds that this is a typical example of Nat Bar Nat. There's no water in the pot, no water, no other liquid, only a rice or a vegetable or some other food, even fish, which is one of the examples, by the way, that is cooked in the pot. So what happened here? This is not real flavor. This is not the flavor of a tafshil. What's a tafshil? A tafshil has a flavor. It has absorbed tam, right? That's a tafshil. It absorbed tam. It's fleishiks. It absorbs it. It has a tam. Nat Bar Nat says as follows. I just cooked this morning meatballs. And the tam of the meatballs went into the kedera. It went into the pot, right? That's tam number one. The tam of the meatball went into the pot's walls. Tam number two is the tam that's coming out from the pot's walls into the rice that I'm cooking later on in the afternoon. There's an opinion that holds that this is a Nat Bar Nat only because coming out of the pot is not the same as coming out from the real food. If I have a tafshil, then I'm actually getting the tam directly from the other food. The meat is absorbed into the tafshil. The cheese is absorbed into the tafshil directly, food to food. But if it goes from the food to the pot, and then from the pot is the one that emits the tam that is being emitted from a pot is a tam kolush me'od.
I have a big problem with that. Then I should be able to cook milk in a... That's a ben yomo. The taste of the meat.
Oh, one second. We're not holding there yet. One second.
No.
Yeah, 1 second, just wait.
Yeah.
So Nat Bar Nat says what? Nat Bar Nat says that the tam coming out from the pot is diluted. By the fact that it's coming from the pot now. That chemically is a different kind of tam. And, listen carefully, and whenever it's a tam dehetera, basar is mutter, chalav is mutter, it's only the mixing of two is that it's asar. Okay? As opposed to what? As opposed to tam of a nevela, of a tam of an iser. A tam of iser, treif, will always remain treif as long as I can feel it.
There is no Nat Bar Nat by
There's no din of Nat Bar Nat by isura.
Nat Bar Nat cannot take away the iser.
Why? Because it's an iser, and as long as the iser is detected, it's felt, it's asar.
If I understand it correctly, Nat Bar Nat cannot iser, Nat Bar Nat can vent tam ke'ikr.
Well, of course. Yes.
So in other words, the tam is the tam of Nat Bar Nat cannot represent the substance itself. But an Isser, it can't take away two different
Can't take it away,
topics.
right.
Why should it be able to
As
take
long as I
away?
detect the time of the Isser, it's still there, right? By Hetera, they were makel. They were lenient. They were lenient in saying, this kind of a tam that entered the rice, not a problem. You want to have right now a cheese, cottage cheese on this rice, yogurt, go ahead.
But you have to have said that the meat that was boiled in the pot was water.
No.
Then I can cook milk in the pot.
One second. So I just told you the basic sheet of not by not. The fact that it went into the pot, the metal pot, and the metal pot is the one that emitted the tam, that's one tam, and that's a second tam. Now, comes along the Rivon and says, no, that's not by not. What's understood from the Gemara, it's how you interpret it, is what was allowed is olu. Dogim sha'olu bekdera. You have fish, cold, sitting in a hot pot. They're not being cooked, not cooked. Sitting in a hot pot. Olu. Not nitbashlu. Not nitzlu. Not roasted. Olu. They were served in a hot pot. Because it was not roasted, because it was not cooked, all that happened was the heat of the pot transmitted a klipa into this fish. A klipa, a little bit. Tato gover. How much? There's no liquid. A klipa. A little bit. This klipa being transmitted, this is the not bar, that's why this is the kind of not bar not we're talking about.
So now what can I do, which I wouldn't be able to do otherwise? What can I do now? If there was
No, in this case,
yes.
the Rivon says, I would allow you to have it with dairy. This is
fish.
Yes.
Fish
The
with
fish.
dairy.
Sure. Yeah, the fish. This kind of a not bar not, where it's a little bit coming out from the heat of the pot, just a klipa, that is not bar not. That is what's allowed. Not the example that I gave you before of being actually cooked. Both of them are hot. Both of them are being cooked together. Why? Because cooked together. Both of them are hot according to him. You have the whole tam coming out. I don't care if it's coming out from the pot, he says. All of it is coming out. He says, a little bit we allowed. But if the whole tam comes out into the rice, that's fleishike rice. You can't put yogurt on it. Then there's a third shita. You know when not bar not really makes sense, they say? When you really have three nuts. How do you have three nuts? You're cooking lasagna. How do you make lasagna? You put water in the pot. So you're cooking the lasagna in the water. So you have tam number 1 going into the wall, tam number 2 going into the water, and tam number 3 from the water going into the lasagna. That's so diluted, that's not bar not. That kind of a not bar not we will allow. So if you don't really have that 3 steps, it's not enough to allow you to have your yogurt with your noodles. It's a fleishike noodles if you don't have 3. I mean, it's a fleishike rice. In the case of rice, rice you would actually make with water too. But if it would be a dish where there would be no water, right? You're just making it into the fleishike pot. It would be fleishik. You couldn't mix it. And the Ramah is machmer. We're machmer. The Ashkenazim are machmer not to have that rice, that parve dish, with milk at the same time. You can't have your glass of milk or your coffee with milk after you're done with the rice. That is no chomer. That's what we're going to be learning now in the Ramah. The Ramah says, Mihu, im ein basar batavshil. If there's no meat in the tavshil, like nisbashel b'gdera, it was cooked in a gdera shel basar, mutar lechol achar gvino. You can go ahead and have it right afterwards. Ve'ein bo minhag lehachmir v'chein nohagin. V'chein nohagin lechol basar achar tavshil sheyesh bo gvino. Or cholov. Same thing. You can also have a real basar after a tavshil sheyesh bo gvino or cholov. Miu yesh litol yoda b'neim. That's already another halacha that we said before, but you have to wash your hands. Ve'afilu lo yochal basar mamish rak tavshil shel basar achar tavshil shel gvino im noga b'hem biyodov. If you touch them with your hands, you should wash them. Therefore, he says shamasha meshamesh b'seuda. If it's a waiter who's not touching the food, who's just serving their dishes, v'nogea ba'oichlim, and he's touching them a little bit, ein tzorach netila. The netila is only necessary for those who actually eat. Not for the one who's serving, even though he does come in contact with all the food. He's not going to be eating it. So he doesn't have to be the one washing it. So here the Ramah towards the end just talks about the importance of sometimes the requirement of netila that is required because of contact with the various foods, even though they're tafshilim. But the only point that I wanted really to elaborate on right now, which will continue on Thursday, is this interesting halacha that really is discussed later on in Siman Tzaddik of what happens if you only cooked your parveh meat pot. So, because the Shach has a problem with this. The Shach says, what's the Ramah telling us here? Wait a minute. That you can have cheese after having made parveh, having made rice in the meat pot? I can have it with it there. I don't have to have it after. I can have it with at the same time. According to the halacha of nat bar nat, later on, technically, I can have dairy with this rice. He's telling me a big chiddush here. What's the chiddush? You can. Oh, by the way, you go ahead and have a glass of milk after having had such rice cooked in a pot of meat. Thank you. But later on, we learn that I can have it with it. You tell me I can have it afterwards? What's the chiddush? I can have it with it later on. It's not bar not. So what does the Shach say? Shach says that it's a little difficult. I don't know why, but the Shach, that's the Shach says. Shach says it must be talking about a pot that's not 100% clean. It's not 100% clean, and that's the chiddush of the Ramah over here. You can have it afterwards, even though it's not 100% clean. Not everybody would agree with this. If it's not 100% clean, you would need bittul. If you don't have bittul, why should you be able to have dairy right after? It's like having basar be'ein. So not everybody, I think, would agree with this. But that's the Shach's explanation here. And actually, the halacha, the Chochmah Sod and Pri Megadim say that would be the halacha. Even if it's not completely clean, you would be able to have it afterward. You don't have to wait 6 hours. Rabbi Kiva Eger says that the nafkamina is if you cooked a davar chorif, a sharp food, in a meat pot, since it's charif, it's hot, it draws out more of the taste, and it's not called nat bar nat. It's a tam rishon. On this, the Ramah says that still, it's not like a meat tafshil, you can have it afterwards. The Berhetiv also asks a question on by the way, about a davar chorif, we'll talk about next time. It's a very interesting sugya. What happens if you cut it's non? What if you cut onion, radish, things that are sharp, and especially if you cut them with a knife? We will see they have special halachas in basar becholav and how, one has to be careful not to mix them. So davar chorif and a sakin is a separate halacha, and we will be learning in Mitzvah Shem also a very interesting concept that is seen rarely in the halacha of, you see it in Shechita, in Taaruvot, you saw it once, I think, and twice, but Ilan, you remember the concept of Ne'itzas Sakin Ba'ofar, Ba'doma?
Yeah, sure. Although it's,
sticking a knife in the ground,
question is, how does
in
that
the earth.
work?
Yeah, we'll talk a little
Just
bit.
leave it 24 hours or things like that?
No. Question is how many times.
But the earth has to be very strong.
Yeah, things like that. So that's a very interesting
so.
halacha of when can you do that and when it's recommended to stick the knife into the ground instead of actually making hagala. What kind of a hechsher is that? So that we'll talk about that also, I think, on Thursday, because it somehow touches on this point. But anyway, the Ber Heitev, I think I saw over here, asked a question on this Shach. The Ramah himself in Siman Tzaddik, he was the one that was choishesh lechatchila to the nat bar nat of the Ribon, and it was to the extra chumras. So here the chiddush is, that's why he tells us the chiddush is, even though I'm machmir by nat bar nat, that's only eating together, maybe. But eating afterwards, it's not a problem. So that seems to be, a reasonable explanation, that the Ramah would tell us this chiddush, because he is machmir, nat bar nat, that I may not be able to eat it together. But to eat it afterwards, it for sure would not be. Okay, I think we'll stop over here. We'll continue to Shem on Thursday. We'll finish Siman Pei Tes, and we'll see the other halachas in Sif Dalet.